Great. Well, thank you so much again for inviting me to come and speak. And this is actually not a presentation just from myself. This is on behalf of Scotland, it feels like, but actually this is a presentation that has been put together by all of the names that you can see on screen. And so it's a kind of combination of short presentations that have been pulled together, and I'm going to present them all, but please know that these slides have been put together by all the different contributors. So a massive thank you to them in advance for putting this together and yeah, helping us share implementation lessons from Scotland, which was the title for this presentation. The first presentation, oh sorry, I should probably just say, yeah, I'm Laura. I got married 2 weeks ago, so my name's changed, but I have no idea how to change it on Teams. So my name's Laura Anderson, but who knows how to change it on Teams. So if you see young, that's what it is. And I was part of the Environmental Protection Scotland Committee and have now stepped in to EPIC this year alongside Nigel. And so Nigel is, oh, I'm hoping you can still see my slides. Nigel was the chair of Environmental Protection Scotland and also sits on the EPIC committee. He is the head of protective services at Fife Council, and currently he's off enjoying a well-deserved holiday. But for his presentation, we thought it would actually be good to start off this whole section from EPS from Scotland, actually talking a little bit about just the history. I know it's been mentioned in the chair's welcome and reflections, but Environmental Protection Scotland merged with the Institution of Environmental Scientists. Oh,
sorry to interrupt you, Laura. Your slides have disappeared.
That's all right. I can pull them straight back up again. Thank you for shouting that out before I go too long. Hopefully you'll see them again pop up in a second.
Yeah, they're back. Thanks.
Great. So EPS merged with IES and the EPIC committee back in January of this year. Like a lot of small environmental charities, there were significant challenges around membership and funding, especially as the majority of membership subscriptions came from Scottish local authorities. EPS pursued a number of business development proposals throughout 2024, but the Board of Trustees, also directed by the Chair Nigel, were exploring options to work in partnership or merge, integrate with other like-minded charities and organisations. We looked through a number of different organisations. However, it became clear that the Institution of Environmental Scientists would be a perfect fit for Environmental Protection Scotland, as their charitable purposes and constitutions were very closely aligned. The Institution of Environmental Scientists and Environmental Protection Scotland both aim to advance environmental protection through promoting a scientific approach to the conservation of the physical and natural environment, public education and professional engagement, and they promote environmental improvement by influencing policy, reducing pollution and advancing knowledge and best practices. So we know that EPIC was formed after the Environmental Protection UK merged, and it was officially launched in February 2024. So already a perfect model and structure to allow EPS to seamlessly merge together. And we know there's been lots of members that have come over and joined us with that journey. The integration with IES offered a significant practical benefit. For instance, the formation of EPIC within IES has already demonstrated success in integrating local authority staff and providing free membership to this group. This model provided a tested framework that was readily adapted to include EPS members, ensuring continuation of engagement and the proliferation of best practices across the UK. And it provided a stable and supportive environment for EPS's ongoing work. Additionally, the specific work and negotiations that had taken place underscored the feasibility and desirability of this integration. The proposed business relationship plan and detailed discussions around incorporating EPS's work into EPIC's programme highlighted through the consideration of planning that has gone into this option. This level of preparation and the clear benefits made it a more attractive and viable option to other strategies that were discussed at the board. And this integration offered a strategic and well-supported path forward for EPS to continue our mission and be effective making use of the resources that we had. Discussions with IES led to the production of a proposed business relationship plan, Most current EPS work and activities could readily be incorporated into EPIC's work programme, and EPS members could be invited to join IES and EPIC on suitable terms. Those proactive expert EPS members who have been at the core of our work and activities in recent years can be brought onto appropriate committees, work streams within EPIC, and really to achieve ongoing engagement and actually to add value to EPIC. And some of the presentations later are from people who have done just that. Integrating EPS into the IES family will strengthen IES in Scotland and in particular provide an opportunity to build links between EPIC and Scottish local authorities, where EPIC currently has stronger links compared to other parts of the UK. With constrained local authority resources across the UK and emerging environmental delivery challenges, stronger links between local authority professionals across Scotland, England, Ireland and Wales will be critical for environmental outcomes. So yeah, we're just really glad to have this joined up thinking practice and as part of this merger. And just a little bit about the contributions from EPS to EPIC. We are helping to lead EPIC's work on issues affecting Scotland and the implementations of EPIC's wider work in the context of Scotland. And these are just some of the specific areas where value could be added by EPS, so improving the quality of work, providing evidence or case studies from Scotland, adding value across EPIC's work, highlighting implications from Scotland, and supporting new work streams on specific issues for policy implementation in Scotland. And this is Nigel's final slide, and his note said it would be good for us kind of moving forward from this merger to mind map all of the different groups operating in our policy areas and look at how information is exchanged and look at what key players sit on each and how direct and indirect influences can be had. And he did actually mention that I can see that my slides keep popping in and out, so I'll pop them back up again. But he did mention that this mind map that you see is a mock-up of ones from Noise Group, so he knows that it doesn't actually make any sense, but he just wanted to kind of illustrate what might be possible if we were to be mind mapping some of the different activities. So that is the presentation that Nigel provided just to really set the scene a little bit on EPS and IES and EPIC and how the merger happened earlier this year and some of the ways that we are going to be working together. The second presentation is from Jen Simpson. Jen provided a little bit of an introduction to who she is and her role within Environmental Protection Scotland. So she was part of EPS and has also been a member of the Institution of Environmental Scientists and the Institute of Air Quality Management for the last 10 years. She has been working in air quality for over 30 years, has 17 years in the local authority space as an air quality specialist, 17 years in consultancy, and her role in EPS was the co-chair of the Air Quality Expert Advisory Group. And her day job is a technical director with SWECO, an environmental engineering consultancy, managing the air quality and carbon team. And really, she is looking forward to seeing how EPS and EPIC can continue to work together. But for her presentation on the lessons from Scotland, she wanted to give an example of latest research that Environmental Protection Scotland was a partner of and that she was involved in. And this is research that was done between Edinburgh, Cardiff and York universities, looking at the potential impacts on pregnancy from air quality. And this is something that Jen was personally involved in and has a really great interest in. So just a little bit about this. So the data and modelling. SEPA provides data and analysis to support the National Modelling Framework, which assists in the review and assessment process. When it comes to enforcing local air quality management duties, Under the Environment Act 1995, SEPA has the power to direct local authorities to take action if it's not making sufficient progress on meeting air quality objectives, or if its actions are deemed inappropriate. And this includes requiring local authorities to declare an air quality management area or develop an air quality action plan. And the ways that this project was supporting government strategy is that SEPA is a key delivery partner for Scotland's air quality strategies, such as the Cleaner Air for Scotland, which we'll talk a little bit about in a moment, and providing scientific evidence and leading or supporting action in a variety of priority sectors. And here are the Cleaner Air for Scotland documents, the reports that have been out. So both the Cleaner Air for Scotland and Cleaner Air for Scotland 2 have both had sets of key actions that will be implemented as a result of the strategies and focus on multi-agency cooperation. Working groups are regularly held to ensure the success within key performance indicators for accountability. Since the original Cleaner Air for Scotland strategy was published in 2015, we have, and there's a long list of positives that Jen has put here, we have, since our original publication in 2015, introduced the most ambitious legislation in the world to end Scotland's contribution to climate change by 2025. Published the Environment Strategy, which emphasises the fundamental role of the natural environment, which plays in supporting a fairer, healthier and more inclusive society. We have also updated our national transport strategy. We have established Scotland's first low emission zone, which was in Glasgow, and we now have them in Edinburgh, Aberdeen and also in Dundee. We've become the first country in Europe to include the World Health Organization's guideline value of PM2.5 in domestic legislation and put in place a national PM2.5 monitoring network. We're committed to reducing motor vehicle kilometres by 20% by 2030, increase our active funding travel to over 500 million over the next 5 years, and that was from 2020-21. And taken major steps to reform Scotland's planning system. In total, 36 of the 40 actions set out in the Cleaner Air for Scotland have been fully completed, with the remainder being carried over into the Cleaner Air for Scotland 2. And Jen wanted to use these as a case study just to show some of the positives that have come out of the various projects here in Scotland when it comes to cleaner air. And she left a note to say that she is looking forward to working with you in the future and bringing shared successes when we are working for all of these different challenges together within EPIC. And so that is the presentation that was provided by Jen Simpson. The next presentation was provided by Dawn Taylor. Dawn is Lead Officer for Environmental Health in Public Protection in the Protective Services Department of Fife Council. This is Dawn's presentation, which is thinking about the lessons, implementation lessons from Scotland, thinking about tackling noise from licensed premises. This is talking about the implementation of the Licensing Scotland Act and how it affected noise complaints. The enforcement and issuing of licences effectively changed from the police and courts to the local authorities. There was also a change in culture of how the licences worked and what conditions were imposed, which the trade needed to get used to. The Act also introduced personal licences for those running licensed premises. The role of licensing standard officers, LSOs, was created in Fife and recruited 6 at the end of 2007 to help implement the new regime. The Act also brought in licensing objectives of, so there's a few here, I think there's 5. 1, preventing crime and disorder. 2, securing public safety. 3, preventing public nuisance. 4, protecting and improving public health. And 5, protecting children and young persons from harm. Loud music from pubs and clubs had been a problem for the public and environmental health professionals for a number of years, and complaints had been complex and difficult to deal with. Music, live or otherwise, does attract customers to licensed premises, and using nuisance laws is not always successful. Commercial premises have had a defence of best practical means, and trying to set noise levels with noise limiters is problematic. And quite often bands and DJs were bypassing the limiter, and some limits have been set to as low as to negate the effects of the music. Once the Licensing Scotland Act came into force, Fife Council decided to use this objective to tackle the thorny issue of noise from pubs and clubs. Fife currently has 4 licensing standards officers on 2 separate shifts, 2 officers on each. They work 2 p.m. till 1:50 a.m, 4 days on, 4 days off. This allows them to work at the busiest times for licensing premises, in the evenings and at weekends. Previously, councils had been forced to use the Environmental Protection Act to tackle the problem. However, the EPA includes inherent defences for commercial premises of best practical means. Basically, they are doing everything they reasonably can. The recourse for the council, if problems cannot be solved informally, is to serve a statutory notice, and then if this is not complied with, a fixed penalty notice. If the offending premises refuses to pay the fixed penalty or pay it as it carries on anyway, the next step is the Prosco Fiscal and the Sheriff. This is costly in both time and money, and there can be significant delays before getting it to court. With the Licensing Act, the licensing standards officers believe there to be a nuisance caused by a licensed premises, they can approach the clerk to the licensing board and ask for a review. To caveat this, it is the nuisance has to be linked to the sale of alcohol. Fife believes that music from clubs is intrinsic to the business, and where the pubs have music on this is to attract customers, therefore it's linked to the sale of alcohol. There are various steps for LSOs, the licensing standard officers, must take when they have a verified noise nuisance complaint. Issue a warning letter, work with the premises licence holder and complainer and set noise limit levels. And the final stage is to review the premises licence. A review is always the last resort. The clerk will then schedule a review at the next licensing board meeting, and if the board decides that the nuisance is proved, then there are several penalties available to them. The clerk will then schedule a review at the next licensing board meeting. If the board decides there are several penalties, and they'll issue a written warning, varying the licence, which may include removing live music, recorded music or televised football from the licence. Removing these activities can be a serious penalty for the premises if they rely on activity that these can draw customers in. The board can suspend licence for a period of time. This is subject to appeal and can lead to substantial loss of income. If a licence is suspended by the board for a length of time, it cannot be seen as a punishment. It can only be to sort the issues raised. For example, suspend the licence for 14 days to allow staff to undergo mandatory training. And for more serious offences, revocation. The process is notably quicker than prosecuting under the Environmental Protection Act, and the financial penalties of losing activities, having the licence suspended or revoked would probably be more substantial than a fine at court. I'll just get the slides up. I have no idea why they keep popping off. Even with the best intentions, technology is difficult. As you can see from this graph, oh, it's popped away again. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Sorry, bear with me. There we go. As you can see from the graph, before Fife Council began using the Licensing Act for noise, the team had over 100 complaints a year about noise from licensed premises. Due to the increased monitoring and reviews to the board, the licensing trade quickly realised that they had to take the LSOs seriously when they came and spoke to licence holders about noise. They understood eventually that their livelihoods were in jeopardy, and if they continued to cause nuisance to neighbours. As such, the trend of complaints about noise from licensed premises has gradually dropped away. We believe 15 out of 16 to be 16 to be an outlier on the general downward trend. Also, some of the problems pre-COVID for the trade were that premises were getting more and more desperate to attract customers, so risks were being taken, and this has carried on further post-COVID, as well as the Aberdeenshire decision emboldening licence holders. The licensing board did revoke a licence previously after a particularly feisty defence of the premises by their solicitor. That this was then appealed. Subsequently, the board are more careful with their judgments. The Aberdeenshire decision, the Aberdeenshire appeal declared that the public had to be more than one premises. However, quite a few complaints about pub and club noise are from residential premises physically attached to the pub or club, either above or next to, and for these reverting back to using the Environmental Protection Act. The enforcement of the Act was given to a driven and extremely competent manager who wanted to achieve improvements to the new legislation. She and the council had a willingness to try something different and make a difference. It was important that they spent time early on to speak with the premises managers, whether pub, club or off licence. For private member clubs, working men's clubs, bowling clubs, political clubs, etc., the council ran seminars to inform them of the change and emphasis of the law. Previously, some private member clubs had been lax about letting in non-members. For long-standing complaints where getting to monitor is tricky, Fife had a specific mobile phone, colloquially called the bat phone. The LSOs would carry it with them, and if a customer experienced a noise problem, they could ring the bat phone, and the licensing standards officers would try to get to them as soon as possible. The bat phone number is only used on a Friday and Saturday evening, and is not readily available to the public. It is given out to complainers when they receive an acknowledgement to their complaint. The use of this for LSOs is to deal with noise from pubs and clubs, and is free and frees up EHO time to do other noise complaint and improved services to the public. Okay, so we've had EPS introduction, we have had air quality from Jen, we've also then just talked about noise, and we also just have a quick, just one slide from Dominic Young. Dominic Young is a specialist contaminated land officer at Renfrewshire Council, and I know that NCLOG is actually going to have a presentation of their own, so we didn't want to touch too much on this. But from Dominic, he just wanted to share a little bit about the integration of EPS with IES, particularly thinking about from Environmental Protection Scotland, the Land Quality Expert Group, and how some of these options are now working together. IES offers several routes for land quality issues to be integrated. So the Land Condition Community, LCC, and the National Contaminated Lands Officers Group, NCLOG, acts as the land contamination specialist within EPIC. The Land Condition Community is a member-led specialist group for land condition professionals spanning sectors and job types, and is dedicated to promoting best practice and specialism. The LCC steers the IES activities related to land condition and development resources and holds events for the community, and it's got a dedicated network for early career professionals and providing valuable opportunities for professional development and peer-to-peer learning. And it's great to also have EPS being able to engage with the NCLOG, bringing together contaminated land professionals working in local authorities. And so it was just nice to be able to know that people from the EPS network have been able to go right into those different networks and working groups. Okay, on the home straight, I was asked, so I don't work for a local authority. As you heard in my introduction, I'm an environmental scientist. I'm doing a PhD, that's my sort of day job, but I am a campaigner. And I was asked to come and think a little bit about some of the implementation lessons from Scotland through some previous new policies and pieces of legislation that we've seen, and tasked to share a little bit of a reflection on behalf of the group as to why these have been able to work successfully. And potentially why these have happened maybe quicker than in other parts of the UK. And so I'm going to share 3 short case studies. One is going to be about the smoking ban, one is about the carrier bag charge, and the other is about the disposable vape ban, to show how relationships, leadership and collaboration have been able to shape implementation success, particularly in Scotland. So the first is the example. Oh, my slides keep disappearing, but good thing is I've now got the hang of how to keep pulling them up again. There we go. The first is this example about policy implementation in Scotland and why it maybe works a little bit differently. Scotland operates on a smaller, more relational scale. With only 32 local authorities, people tend to know each other and professional networks overlap across policy areas. That allows fast information to flow and collaboration. Bodies like SEPA, Environmental Protection Scotland, COSLA, all of these organisations and many others are closely linked to the Scottish Government, so local challenges can be fed directly into national decision making. Even our media landscape is a little bit different and supports this. We tend to have kind of one national broadcaster or broadcasting platform, depending on where you're looking at, to kind of push out maybe more consistent messaging, or at least messaging across a whole country. And this closeness gives Scotland a unique implementation advantage. The first case study as a group we were discussing in terms of implementation lessons from Scotland was the Smoke Free Scotland in 2006. Scotland led the UK by introducing smoke-free legislation in 2006, banning smoking in enclosed public spaces. This was driven by strong political leadership and broad public support. I think it was around 67% of the public supported this before it had come in. Implementation worked because the NHS, local authorities and enforcement officers collaborated closely, sharing guidance and messaging. The communication campaign was clear and positive, making compliance almost universal. Within a year, heart attack admissions dropped significantly, a clear example of how Scotland's joined-up system turns policy into real action. That was the first example that jumped to mind when we were thinking about implementation lessons. Another was the carrier bag charge, which was in 2014. Obviously, we know it's moved from 5p, but this was the original posters that came out at that time. In 2014, Scotland introduced a 5p carrier bag charge ahead of the rest of the UK. The goal was behaviour change, not just litter reduction, and it worked, with bag use dropping by up to 90% within the first year. The implementation success came from joined up delivery, with Zero Waste Scotland providing national coordination, consistent guidance and clear branding. Local authorities and retailers worked very closely together, supported by EPS and other networks. Because everyone was connected and communication channels were short, Scotland could implement and enforce the policy quickly and consistently. And the third case study, this is one personally I was very involved in, so I felt a bit embarrassed to kind of include it, but actually colleagues from EPS were encouraging us to use it actually as another case study where implementation was successful in a space where Scotland led. So the most recent example is this one from actually just this year, where on the 1st of June, disposable vapes were banned. This campaign started locally in Scotland, and councils actually raised the issues about not just waste, but also youth vaping and many other issues that this touched on. 29 out of the 32 local authorities, so that's over 90%, jointly wrote to the Scottish Government supporting a ban, which was an incredible show of coordination. And this came from all different political parties, and it wasn't just a campaign from one in particular. The issue gained a lot of national traction thanks to close collaboration between public health bodies, environmental NGOs, academics and policymakers. And this is an example of bottom-up influence, which shows how Scotland's connected system, where people across sectors already know and trust each other, can accelerate national change. So to finish, some of the enablers and barriers when it comes to implementation in Scotland. The enablers and barriers are kind of two sides of the same coin. We've got a small connected system with close relationships with policymakers, which are a huge advantage, and we can move quickly and collaborate easily. But at the same time, small scale can mean limited capacity, especially in smaller local authorities. Policy ambitions can sometimes outpace delivery resources, and success often relies on individual champions of a cause. But recognising these dynamics help us design implementation strategies that play to our strengths, which are relationships, communication and collaboration. At At Environmental Protection Scotland, and of course we are now part of EPIC, we approach implementation through a practical lens, building on some of the, I guess, the toolkit that we've developed over many years. Focus on early relationship building, co-designing guidance that local authorities can adapt and adopt, and encouraging peer mentoring between councils. We also identify and support local champions, individuals who can drive real change. And because feedback loops with the Scottish Government are short, we can quickly adjust and share what's working across the network. This keeps implementation grounded, collaborative and adaptive. And looking across the 3 examples of smoke-free spaces, the bag charge and the vape ban, success comes from 4 main ingredients: strong leadership from ministers and local champions, a relational culture that connects government agencies and practitioners, fast feedback loops thanks to small networks, and clear, consistent public communication that builds trust and compliance. I'm just finishing, so I won't pull the slides up again. And Scotland's implementation success is about resources and how people and organisations can work together. So I hope that's been an interesting kind of half an hour on some reflections from people within the Environmental Protection Scotland network, thinking about implementation success in Scotland and, of course, barriers and enablers. It comes from our size, but also our relationships. And I know that that's something that we hope to bring into this. So obviously the challenge is, of course, to maintain that, to maintain those connections, share learning and keep supporting each other. I won't be taking questions because, as you can tell, those presentations were from such a big variety of people and I'm not an expert on all of those areas, but EPS is now at the heart of EPIC and we all look forward to meeting you, whether that's through webinars or other working groups, and just thank you for the opportunity for EPS to give one of the presentations today. So thanks very much, Sarah.